Welcome to the channel where I break down NXT and tell you what worked and what didn't work this week. And I didn't like what happened with Stephanie Vaquer. Let's start off with this. Stephanie Vaquer opens the show with both her belts, but she ends up relinquishing the NXT Women's North American Championship because she can't defend both championships at the same time consistently. Now she gives the belt to Ava, and it is announced that we are getting a 6-woman ladder match at Stand and Deliver where we will crown a new Women's North American Championship, but Stephanie Vaquer only gives up that belt on the guarantee that she can choose her challenger at the same pay-per-view. Now Jordynne Grace and Jaida Parker both come out to the ring, and both of them try to make their statement to get Stephanie Vaquer to pick them, but it just turns into a massive brawl. Here's my problem with this. I think it was way too early to drop the belt from Stephanie Vaquer. Remember back a long time ago when Keith Lee held both the NXT and the North American Championship, and he also just relinquished it really early. And I don't think that was the right decision then, and I don't think it's the right decision now. Stephanie Vaquer made history by being the first double champion in NXT. I know we have that whole issue of Mandy Rose, not talking about this now. Stephanie Vaquer held 2 women's championships at the same time. She defended both of them on the same night. That's pretty cool. I don't understand why we couldn't have just had Stephanie in the ladder match too. And then in that ladder match, she loses the North American Championship. And then later in the night, it's an uphill battle for her to attain the Women's Championship. Could have been an interesting story to tell throughout the show, but no, we ended up dropping the belt from her. At the end of the day, it's just so disappointing because it started off relatively strong and gave us hope that she might actually have a reign with both titles. But no, the chance to make genuine history is lost now, and we're just gonna move on. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited for that ladder match too, and whatever Stephanie's gonna do, because it's most likely gonna end up with her in a triple threat match with Jordynne Grace and Jaida Parker. Both of them will have a match next week. It's probably gonna be for the number 1 contendership for this belt. It's gonna end in no disqualification, and it's gonna go to Stand and Deliver as a challenger, except if Stephanie ends up choosing someone as a surprise, but I don't think that's really in the cards right now. They probably want to focus on NXT talents. Now throughout the show, we had a lot of matches that are deciding the participants for this match. The first match was Zarya versus Lash Legend. It happened immediately after this whole segment, and it was a pretty solid match. Zarya ends up winning the match, which is a amazing decision. I'm glad we're pushing Zarya as a single star again. And later in that night, she and Sol Ruka meet up backstage, and Zarya says she wants Sol Ruka to also be in that match. She wants them in it together, and I think that's gonna happen because that'll be a very interesting dynamic in the match, make it a lot more interesting to watch. But let's also discuss what's happening with Lash Legend, because she's had stop-start pushes. Like, she's kind of doing this thing with the TNA with Knockout Tag Team titles. A while ago, she was on the main roster for a bit, but it doesn't feel like they're ready to commit to her. And I think she has the complete package. I think she can be a major star. She has the size that's really impressive to look at. She's very strong. I mean, she body slammed Otis once. Like, that's no small feat for a woman. And she has this weird aura around her where whenever she's on screen, you're interested. It's not charisma, because she doesn't have what Tiffany Stratton or Rhea Ripley has, but she definitely has something that when she's on the screen, you're just entertained and you're watching, your eyes are on the screen. And that's rare because a lot of talent don't have that. Kelani Jordan, for example, although she's my favorite, she doesn't have that, whatever that is, that it factor. Now, talking about Kelani Jordan, later that night, she and Roxanne Perez both meet up backstage in Ava's office. Roxanne says she wants to be in a ladder match because she wants to have held every women's championship you can possibly hold in NXT. And Kelani Jordan says she was the first one to win the championship in a ladder match. She should be in it again. The two of them bicker, sets up a match, and that match was a damn banger. Like, if you're gonna watch any match of this show, go check out that match. It was fantastic. And Kelani Jordan ends up winning. Another decision I really like. So far, she's my favorite to win this belt. I would really love to see Kelani Jordan pick up that belt back, especially with her character now being a bit different. And I think there's an interesting thing you can tell there. Like, she's already a 2-time champion and she has it back now. And since holding the belt, she has gone through some character progression. Like, there's a lot more we still need to address when it comes to Kelani Jordan, but she has evolved as a character a tiny bit that would be interesting to see how she holds that belt now. When it comes to Roxanne Perez, I don't know what we're doing with her. I don't think she's gonna go to Stand and Deliver because there's no obvious feud there for her, unless you break up her and Cora Jade, but that would kinda feel rushed at this point. And when it comes to the main roster, I don't think they're gonna go with Bayley. Bayley's more in the intercontinental women's scene. So what are we doing with Roxanne Perez? I know people are saying she needs to pay her dues, she needs to put a few women over, but really, Kelani didn't need to be put over. Kelani already has the power. You could have put her against, I don't know, Jakara Jackson, and the victory for Kelani would have meant the exact same. Kelani isn't Roxanne Perez level, but she's still established. So what really is the plan that we're doing with Roxanne Perez? Because I thought her and Bayley having a WrestleMania feud could have been interesting and would have been really big for Roxanne if she went over Bayley at WrestleMania. But clearly that's not what we're doing. So up to this point we have Kelani Jordan and Zarya in that match, with most likely So Ruka probably being in there too, but over the coming weeks we're gonna find out a few more competitors. So far Kelani is my option, but Zarya is probably the more likely one to win. Regardless, so far it looks like a really interesting match. We then move on to a little backstage package where the family are investigating all the members of Darkstate. They have this beef with Darkstate and they go through the files of each and every wrestler, seeing what their past is, and most of them are athletes or have some sort of athletic background. Surprise, surprise, this is NXT, boy. But yeah, it ends up that Stax isn't very happy with this and he just walks off after the meeting. Everybody is like saying Stax is very suspicious. I don't think that's what's happening here. I think the family is going to end up breaking up. I think what's going to end up happening is Tony D'Angelo is going to be moved to the main roster, but the family can't come with him. Like Luca Crucifino and Adriano Rizzo are not main roster ready yet. And while Stax is pretty interesting, he's at a point in his career where if he went to the main roster, he's gonna get released within 3 months because he just doesn't stand out yet. Whereas Tony D'Angelo, he's going to go to the main roster, he's going to be fine. He might be a lower mid-card jobber, like a comedy-esque act for a bit, but I think he's going to be fine. His character work and his wrestling, it's fine. For the rest of that then, it leaves the family in a weird spot in NXT, and I don't think Stax is going to be the new leader of the family. I think he's more so going to go on his own, do his own thing, while Luca Crucifino and Adriano Rizzo continue the family storyline as a lower mid-card faction, maybe with a few more members. That's what I think is going to happen after they probably lose to Darkstate at Stand and Deliver, because that's probably where this is going. Darkstate has a match with Trick Williams, Oba Femi and Je'Von Evans next week, which they probably might win because I don't think Trick, Oba and Je'Von are going to get along, and that's nicely going to progress to the family feud at Stand and Deliver, where they will once again win, putting a lot of momentum behind this faction, and Tony D'Angelo can then nicely go up to the main roster, and we can see how that works out for him. But since we're talking about Je'Von, Trick and Oba, Trick Williams comes to the ring and he talks about his NXT championship, which leads to Je'Von coming out, and like I've constantly said, I'm finally glad they addressed this. Je'Von Evans says Trick Williams is turning into Carmelo Hayes, and that Trick has nothing because Je'Von has actually pinned Oba, or almost defeated Oba, because back at NXT Deadline, Je'Von Evans would have pinned Oba Femi. He was literally just a second too short. The match ended a second too early. Otherwise, Je'Von Evans would have a pinfall victory over Oba Femi, which is a very rare thing in NXT. And then Oba comes out and the whole brawl starts breaking out. Oba clears the ring of Trick and Je'Von, and then Darkstate comes out and they just launch an attack on Oba. Trick Williams slides into the ring afterwards, and it kind of looks like Trick might be part of Darkstate, but nah, they just beat him down. They beat Trick's ass up, and then, you know, Darkstate stands tall. I just went through a whole phase of talking about Darkstate, so you guys get my general idea of where this is gonna lead. Later the night backstage in Ava's office, it is announced that Je'Von, Oba, and Trick will team up against Darkstate. So, but like I said, we addressed that, so let's talk about Stand and Deliver and what's gonna happen with this triple threat match. I think Oba Femi is gonna win. Trick Williams is probably going to the main roster. His little heel run has been interesting, but for the most part, I feel like Trick Williams is done with NXT. Meanwhile, Je'Von will probably go on to feud with Oba. That'll be the feud we have for the summer, which will be nice. With that out of the way, let's talk about the tag team division, which is really starting to build up, especially tonight. Man, I'm really starting to dig what NXT is doing with this tag team division. Okay, so Pretty Deadly are in NXT. They get a huge pop, surprisingly, and they're trying to fashionize Hank and Tank. They're trying to put them together, make them more into a cohesive unit, and then the NQCC walk past the ring, and Hank and Tank are about to have a match. They end up losing, continuing that story of them losing, which gives the NQCC, Tavion Heights, and Milesborn a nice solid victory. So they're probably going to be in contention for the NXT championships, probably at Stand and Deliver, which I wouldn't mind. But for Hank and Tank, this is another loss. So backstage, the two of them are kind of like worrying about what their future is when Fraxiom walks up and Nathan Frazier kind of mocks them. And then Axiom comes to back him up, and Axiom says like, I wish me and Nathan Frazier had the chemistry and the friendship you guys have. And that's kind of been the whole thing with Fraxiom, is they're not really friends, they just work insanely well together and they always end up winning, which is when Swipe Right from Evolve, they're a really fun tag team. They've done some really cool stuff in Evolve, and everybody has basically said, yeah, these guys, they're probably going to be some of the first to get called up to NXT. Here it is now. They were also in the crowd for the previous match, and they mock Fraxiom. This leads us to a match next week for the NXT Tag Team Championships. I don't know if Swipe Right is signed or if this is just a one-off appearance, but I would love it if they were signed. I think they are filling a niche in NXT as these cocky heels that we don't really have at the moment. They would fit in very well in NXT, and it's going to be a great match for Fraxiom to retain. I don't know where we're leading with the whole tag team division. Maybe NQCC versus Fraxiom at Stand and Deliver. Regardless, Fraxiom should not lose these belts to anyone currently because there isn't really a team on Fraxiom's level. And when it comes to Hank and Tank, I really enjoy the story, okay? I think their story they're telling here, it's amazing, it's a great story. But Hank and Tank are just missing something. Like I said earlier with Lash Legend, who just has something, Hank and Tank, they just lack something. Like, the story they're telling is really good. They're really trying to invest in them, and I'm really enjoying it. But when it comes to Hank and Tank, I can't take them seriously. I can't see them. I can't root for them over some of the other teams. I don't know what it is. It's just they're lacking the it factor. And then to end the show, in the main event, we have Ricky Saints defeating Shawn Spears. He is the new NXT North American champion. Like I said, everyone who was so up in arms about Shawn Spears, just sit your ass down, man. Like, nobody was thinking Shawn Spears was genuinely going to have a 3-4 month reign. It was always going to be to put someone else over, and he did. Ricky Saints is your new NXT North American champion. Congratulations to him, he really deserves this. He's made an instant impact in NXT, and I think like he's already one of the top 4 most interesting characters on NXT, which, well, yeah, it's a compliment to Ricky himself, but it's also kind of like an insult to NXT for how weak their men's division is compared to the women's. We're not talking about that. After the match, Ethan Page ruins the moment and attacks Ricky Saints and holds that belt up. This is such an interesting story because both of them have pretty much the same story coming in. Both of them came into NXT, almost instantly won the championship. The only difference is Ricky came in and he did it and everyone was hyped about it. Meanwhile, Ethan Page didn't have as much hype as Ricky Saints, and the fans loved Ricky Saints for what he did, while Ethan got the hell booed out of him. This is going to be a really interesting story going to Stand and Deliver, and I'm really curious to see where it goes. Obviously, Ricky Saints is probably going to retain, but I wouldn't mind if Ethan Page wins that belt. Like, even if it's just a short reign, people are going to be angry about it, saying it's hot potatoing the belt. Man, I don't care. Sometimes it's good. I think it would be an interesting struggle for Ricky Saints, something he hasn't had in NXT yet. Overall, tonight's episode of NXT, it was great. It was a 10 out of 10 episodes. So many plot lines and storylines got advanced, and I'm loving how everything is interweaving with each other. That's really my favorite part of NXT and something I've missed from the old NXT back in 2023, making me sound like a boomer. But it's what I miss, and everything fitting in together and just working nicely together. It's like different puzzle pieces that you're trying to put together. It's just my favorite type of wrestling content, and I love breaking it down. So yeah, episode tonight, 10 out of 10. And if you liked the episode too, let me know in the comments. I would love to know what you think. Leave a breakdown in the comments what you agree and disagree with me with. I always just try my best to respond. So yeah, let me see what you think. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I really enjoyed this episode of NXT. I don't know what to say, man. So leave a like and subscribe. We're almost at 450 subscribers. Let's get there. Just 2 subscribers, guys. Come on, please. I break down NXT for you every week. So if you're interested in that, just subscribe. And I'll see you again soon. Goodbye.